Hello again. Welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. Paul Schrimpf and Eric Sfiligoj joining you again from well, I guess we're back to our undisclosed locations.
Yeah, have we left our undisclosed locations? I mean, I've had the same backdrop for months, and I see that you have added to your backdrop a shelf where I'm sure you're going to be planning to put all those Emmy awards you expect us to be winning here someday, I suppose.
Look out for the YouTube video on how to construct an office on the fly. So yeah, it's coming. No, I promise. Next week you're going to see something a lot better than this. Come retail week, I promise. So
okay. Well, yeah, I will say that the advantage of this is the background does not distract from you in any way, shape, or form.
Good. Yeah, that's true. There's nothing to look at. I'll be waiting for the video comments. Just why is there a bobblehead back there? Where did you get that? All that stuff. So we'll see what people say. Anyway, but we hadn't seen a undisclosed location in a long time, and there's probably people sitting with booze on their shelves. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? So now they know that they can, go back to the drinking game again. So at least
I suppose, yes, that's true. That's true. So I guess, Paul, you've got some news to kind of start us out with based on someone you were chatting with recently.
Well, not really news, but it's a report that Ken Zuckerberg from CoBank put out earlier this week on cooperatives and the struggle of cooperatives to kind of survive and what they're going to need to do to sustain themselves, or suggestions on things they should be doing, and there's a bunch of stuff, and we'll put a link up there on a report for the report and for the video that we shot. I got a chance to talk to Ken for a good bit. I think the big thing is the culture. It's a culture of understanding. The culture of looking forward and not looking back. He threw out the examples of Kodak and Blockbuster, and obviously, their demise really just based on trying to hold on to the past rather than look forward to the future. So, having a culture of change and having someone there to kind of look at the forward part of it and not be too aligned with what you're doing now, to look beyond and say, maybe we need to make major changes, or at least, some minor changes, or what's the pathway, what's our road to, over the next 3 to 5 years to get to a place of greater sustainability as a business. So, it's a good kind of reminder conversation of some of the things we should be looking for and some of the factors that are driving it. So I'd recommend if anyone's interested in that and has a extra little bit of time to check it out and see what Ken has to say.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, Paul, actually, we've had some big news break since we did our video last week. Of course, just as we were going to air on our video, we had found out some fairly big news. I know I've mentioned that many times since the COVID outbreak started, that the last trip I remember taking was to the 2020 Commodity Classic that was taking place in San Antonio, Texas. And I remember standing in the atrium waiting for my ride to the airport, watching the local San Antonio news there at the end of February. And they were just beginning to talk about COVID cases appearing in San Antonio. Now, little did I know that that was going to be my last road trip for calendar year 2020. And I was looking forward to maybe being at the 2021 Commodity Classic, which was also planning to take place in San Antonio in early March. But we found out last week that because of COVID concerns continuing, that the organizers for Commodity Classic have decided to take their event virtual as well. So again, Paul, there's another winter show that will be off of everyone's calendar as an in-person event.
Yeah, and I imagine doing it virtual is going to be a bit of a challenge, I think. But if you're having, maybe the state meetings, the national meetings, some of the associations can get those underway, and some of the training and educational stuff. But a lot of the farmers use this as one as a learning experience to tie into kind of a family vacation to get away one more time before the season really starts in earnest. So, calling it what it is kind of that combo of education, learning, and fun. It's really tough. I know I saw a lot of lamenting on Twitter about the fact that it wasn't going to happen and you wouldn't have that kind of break. And it's a shame because it is, it's a lot of it's a networking. You've got the best yielding, high yielding contests and awards and things like that. And you have a chance to interact with some really smart people that maybe you don't see every year. So there's a lot of it's really unfortunate, but hopefully this will be the one last big one that we miss. And we can get back on it, in Q2, Q3 next year. But yes, it was too bad to see, and it's something you and I have enjoyed going to for years too. So.
Yeah, and I know myself. You mentioned networking. I know that Commodity Classic normally for us medium folks, there were usually several press briefings held during the show that the crop protection companies and the equipment companies like John Deere would hold, kind of give everyone a quick update of what was going on at those companies for the calendar year upcoming. And I'm going to miss out on all those meetings and bits of information, which I suspect I'll have to get through the old-fashioned method, phone calls or emails, and but I won't be able to get 10, 12 different story ideas in the course of one afternoon, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not nearly as much fun sitting in front of a computer watching a Zoom on that stuff either. But we'll just have to deal with it and see what happens. So what else you got news-wise? I mean, we should say before we go on, we probably should say that yes, we acknowledge there is a presidential election going on, and we're recording this in the midst of complete uncertainty. So we don't, as we're shooting this, we have no one to congratulate or to mention. So certainly we don't want to. I don't want to leave that kind of hanging. We just don't know yet as we're recording this. So anyway.
I was going to say, Paul, you're dating yourself when you talk hanging and hanging chads. I mean, I think that goes back about 20 years election-wise, not this year, but.
Yeah, and the freaky thing is Florida's cut, dried, and done, and
Well, yeah, this year it's not going to be Florida. So
that's
anyhow, I know a couple of videos ago we mentioned, of course, the big news on dicamba being re-registered by EPA for 2021. But I know we had made a note in that video that the dicamba approval was for XtendiMax and Ingenia by BASF, and also extended the registration for Tavium from Syngenta. There was no mention of Fexapan from Corteva. And actually, we have found out since that based on what the folks at Corteva are saying, they have every intention to re-register Fexapan now that the other registrations have taken place, but they're going to do it in their own separate filing. So expect to see that here in the next month or so. So we will have 4 dicamba over-the-top options for calendar year 2021.
Sure. It probably makes sense to separate that from the other dicamba issues, just almost to make it a separate case on its own, as opposed to lumping it with everything else.
Right. And the only other thing to follow up on, of course, we've been talking a lot about how much of the farmer income here in 2020 is going to be coming from the government aid that has been portioned out over the course of the calendar year. Somewhere to the tune of about $50 billion of total farmer income in 2020 will be coming from the federal government. One interesting note on that, Paul, is I ran across an item that said that of that amount, $18 billion is the amount that will be paid to growers because of losses incurred by the COVID-19 pandemic. So there is your figure, $18 billion out of the 50 is because of impact from COVID.
Gotcha. Very interesting. I should mention one more thing. I did promise I would mention as I think about it. A few weeks ago, we had a video where we talked about China buying a lot of product, a lot of crops. Specifically, I think it was the corn soybean purchases, I believe. And gentleman kind of called out that I said it was mostly just due to China demand, and didn't really give credit to the administration of the folks, domestically who kind of worked on the trade deal to bring up the quotas. And I certainly don't want to overlook that could very well have been a factor, although we don't know exactly what China's motives are. Certainly that set the table for China to purchase more agricultural products. So did want to acknowledge that and say, yep, I wasn't trying to diminish any activity on that front. It was all very important to build those relationships with China, and it's both the administration and it's the folks inside the industry that make those trade deals happen. So thank you to all that. Thank you for that work.
Okay, very good.
And is that it, sir? Are we done?
That will cover us for this week. So I guess we may talk about election stuff next week.
Yeah, and whatever I do with this old attic. I'll have a link to my YouTube channel, probably. Anyway, that's it for this edition of CropLife Retail Week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below.
Your feedback is important to us. We'll try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode.
And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.